Carmen, how we doing?
Well, thank you. How are you, Mr. John?
Trying to stay warm.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yesterday, I had a lot of cold in my house because my husband was in Chicago for his passport was
Okay,
expired,
expired.
and he went to Chicago, and I had a lot of cold here because I didn't know how to change the heat.
All right, now Carmen, your homework is
Okay.
to learn how to turn on your
Yeah.
heat.
It's the same like my husband said. You need to learn.
That's right. So, okay, there you go. There's your homework. Hey, Olivia,
Hi.
are you warm this morning? Are you keeping warm?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of cold.
Yeah, I know.
I know they were talking even a little about a little bit of snow. I don't know. I don't like that. If it's April, no snow. That's what I say. Well, so did anybody have any other problems with the weather on Tuesday?
No, here in my area was okay.
Yeah,
A little raining
right.
and yes.
Yeah, because it's funny because here where I live, we were getting the sirens, the tornado sirens and warnings, and so I was actually teaching class. I was actually online, and suddenly I heard the alarms, and my wife is sending me messages, and she's going to the basement. She took our dogs to the basement, and I'm teaching class. Now the class I'm teaching is a fairly basic class, so some speak Spanish, some speak French. I have another student who speaks Somali. So I had a lesson. At the end of the lesson, we were going to review the emergency procedures. Charge your phone, all the stuff that I had sent in an email. But the problem is we didn't have time to get to the message. So I had to jump to Google Translate and type real
Yeah.
fast. There's a tornado warning, and I had to put it in French, really quickly. Well, what's funny is by the time I was finished putting the messages, just about all the students were gone. They were like, "See you later," and so I thought, okay, good. Everybody knows to get off the line. But it was a little crazy. Yeah, we had a big rain and wind, but that's it. I mean, it wasn't much, so that was good. But there were some tornadoes, in the area. So good thing we're all okay. Yeah. So hopefully, Olivia, Tiaba, you guys didn't have any weather problems on Tuesday.
No,
Okay. Well, that was good.
I was still at home.
Hmm.
My husband picked up the kid
Yeah.
from school.
Now, did the school let out early?
Yes,
Yeah.
at 12:30, I think.
Yeah, so I noticed the messages. We were seeing them on because I was keeping the TV on to look at the weather messages, and they were saying schools. And I kept thinking, oh, this could be a disaster if everybody's picking up their kids.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, middle of the day, it was very clear. So
Yeah.
yeah, okay, well that's good. I was hoping everyone would be okay. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, guys, why don't we go ahead and get started? Again, I'm sure we'll have a few people join us, but I know it's getting closer to spring break for some of the schools. So who knows? Maybe some people are already taking their break. All right. Well, guys, let's go ahead and get started. It is Thursday, April 4th. And of course, you know what that means. That means in just 4 days, the big event will be here. So I said I would talk a little bit more about the eclipse. So just to remind everybody, yes, on Monday, April 8th, it will be the total solar eclipse across the United States. Now, remember, Cincinnati will not see 100% of the event. So you'll see, you know, the partial eclipse where the, you know, the moon looks like it's eating the sun, but you will not see this on the screen. So the idea, of course, is what exactly will happen on Monday. If you are, you know, if you are in the chance to see what's called the total path, what exactly could you expect to see? So I thought I would take just a moment, and I'll share a little video in our email. But the idea is in the total solar eclipse, again, what you will see, and I'm just going to kind of zoom in here just to review a couple of things. So the idea is, of course, the moon comes in between the sun and the earth. And so basically we'll cast a shadow as it crosses a certain path of the United States. So again, if you'll notice here, this is what you know, those of us who are, you know, taking pictures of the eclipse, this is what we'll kind of generally experience. Okay, so you'll see here on the screen, these are called the phases, the steps, okay, of the solar eclipse. So if you notice these little letters, C1, C2, max, C3, and C4, basically what these mean is C1 is what's called the first contact. So that's when the moon just begins to touch the sun and begins to move into the middle of the sun. And then from this time period to the second contact, that's when the moon will come in the middle. Now, so a few things will happen at C2, so I'll talk about that in just a moment in what's called the second contact. But right here, guys, this is the big part right here between C2 and C3, the second contact and third contact. So in the middle is what's called the maximum view. So this is that picture I showed you at the beginning. This picture right here, this is probably the maximum view where you will see these little parts right here. So I'll talk about that in just a moment. But anyway, and then after the third contact, slowly the moon will leave and then begin what's called fourth contact. So the idea is there are basically kind of 5 steps, right? There's first contact, second contact, the maximum view, then it begins to leave and so on. But what's interesting is what happens in the middle. What happens in the middle? Now, this is, of course, what I hope. I've got all my cameras ready, everything ready to go. This is what I hope to catch when I'm taking pictures, but you can't predict it. But this is an example of someone who's put all of these pictures together. But I want to talk a little bit about these parts right here. Okay, this is where the big stuff happens. So I want to take a moment and talk about those events. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Again, I've been using all of these apps and all of these kinds of things. So anyway, I'm just going to show you real quickly equipment, all that stuff. But basically, here's what will happen. Okay, so this is, again, the first contact when the moon begins to move into the path of the sun. So it'll start looking like this. Now, some of you might remember I went to Utah last October. Some of you might remember I went to photograph the what was called the annular eclipse. And this part right here, it was exactly the same. The moon would move into the sun, and it kind of looks like the moon is eating the sun, right? So this part here, if you're staying here in Cincinnati, and if the weather is clear enough, you will see this part of the eclipse. Now, remember, you've got to have your glasses, right? Got your glasses. And of course, if not, you can make a little viewer like I shared with you last week. But the idea is you will see this part of the eclipse here in Cincinnati, okay? But this next part you will not see, and this is what's called the diamond ring. So the diamond ring is that kind of moment right before the moon fully enters into the sun. So this is kind of right before the second contact. So in that little time period, you see how it kind of looks like a diamond ring? See at the part, this would be the top part of the diamond, and this would be the ring part here. So again, I hope that the weather will be clear so I can get pictures of the diamond ring. But then as you move in, the really interesting part is here. This is called Baily's beads. Okay, and it's named after an astronomer who viewed these little red places that you see here. So he viewed these for the kind of the first time, and again, his last name was Bailey. So he said they kind of look like beads. You know, beads on a necklace, for example, they look like little tiny beads, and that's because the moon, of course, is not a perfect shape. So it's kind of the difference between the sun and the little parts of the moon that are not perfect, that the light is coming through and it's getting smaller and smaller. And so it creates these kinds of beads effects. Now, the truth is, this is probably the hardest part to catch because it's so short. It is really short, just a few seconds. So again, I'm hoping if I can get a good view to take pictures of that part as well. But I think most people probably recognize this part here is the big part of the eclipse. This is what's called the corona. Now, my Spanish-speaking students, you will recognize that word, corona, right? Do we recognize that word? Carmen and Fleur? Yeah. Well, we kind of use the same word in English. By the way, corona means the crown, right? Like a king or a queen. Right? I'm sure some of you are the queen of your house. Is that right? So do you wear a crown all the time around your house? You're the queen. Is this true? Yeah. Okay. Flora does. Okay. That's good. So, but this is the big part of the eclipse. This is what most people really are interested in, is what's called the corona. Now, I want to stop and just take a moment because, as I mentioned to you last week, you here in Cincinnati, if you stay in this area, you will not see this part of the eclipse. I'm sorry. You will see the moon go in front of the sun, and it is pretty cool. It goes dark. You'll feel, the temperature change. You might see some stars in the sky. It probably won't get super, super dark, but it will get dark. In 2017, I don't know if anyone was here in 2017, but it was kind of cool. Because here in Cincinnati in 2017, it kind of got dark, it got cold, but you didn't see any stars in the sky. If you are in this location, you'll see stars. You'll see stars in the sky. It'll be nighttime for just a few minutes. So just remember that when you think about what's called the path of totality, so I'm going to show it to you here just real quickly. Okay, so I'm going to show you, this is a picture of the path of totality in Ohio. Okay, so again, I'm going to use Ohio as an example. So guys, if you can see it there, can everybody see that there? Okay, so does everyone see where Cincinnati is on the map? Do you see it down there at the bottom? So there's Cincinnati. Okay, so again, I've told you before, we're about 45 minutes outside of that path. So again, if you try to drive to the path of totality, I would not recommend it unless you have a plan, because it's going to be crazy on that Monday. Thousands and maybe even millions of people are going to be going everywhere trying to see it. And of course, there are lots of parks and places that will have special viewing parties. Again, you probably needed to have plans to see it if you're going to do it. But still, I just wanted to show you that the path, this is the path here, this yellow, right, this yellow part. But if you notice right here, do you see where it says the center? Right there, it says center line of the total eclipse. So just remember that the closer you get, so from the outside, the closer you get to the center, okay, the closer you get, the more time you will see the corona. Okay, so again, if you're on the outside part, you might get to see the corona, this part of the eclipse, for about 1.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. But if you move to the center of the path, right? So again, looking at this map, if you get close to the center, you might be almost at 4 minutes. So that's a pretty good amount of time to see it. And of course, for someone like me who wants to take pictures, that gives me a little more time. But you're probably thinking, Mr. John, all these people are getting so crazy for just 2 or 3 minutes, 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. Well, that's because it's a really amazing thing that's going to happen. So that's why I think it's important just to let you know what's going to happen at each part of the eclipse. So anyway, let me come back to our presentation here. There it is. Okay. So again, the corona, that's kind of the part that everybody really wants to see. Okay. They really want to see the corona. It looks like the flames coming out from the side of the sun. So anyway, guys, there you go. Those are kind of the big stages, the big phases of the eclipse itself. So again, these little middle parts here, the diamond ring, the Bailey's beads, and the corona, these are the big parts of the eclipse that people hope to get a picture of. I hope I'll get a picture of them, but the idea is that's what's going to happen. Now remember, here in Cincinnati, you will not see those things, but you will see the moon, touch, go into the sun, and then eventually it will go kind of dark, but it will not be a total eclipse. So just keep that in mind. Try not to be too disappointed, but still it'll be pretty cool. And hopefully the weather will be good enough here in the area that you will be able to see at least that part of it. So there you go, guys. That's what's happening. That's what's going to happen in the next few days. And again, we hope we hope it'll happen. So we're all pretty excited about it here. Us people who want to take pictures of it. So anyway, that's what's going to happen. And of course, if I am, lucky to get the pictures, I will be very happy to share them with you next week. Okay, so I'm excited. So we'll see what happens. All right, now guys, our goal here for today is we're going to spend some time reviewing the expressions we've been learning for the last 3 classes, and then we're going to continue on in our Burlington modal discussions. This topic today will be talking about must and have to. Okay, we'll talk about those 2 words because they often seem very similar, but there of course are some differences. And then finally, as a special surprise in anticipation of the eclipse, I have a song activity that I think is perfect for this particular situation. All right, so guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to review the expressions from the past few classes, and basically what we'll do first is let's just go through and review the expressions quickly together. So I'm going to ask each person to read the little card that we see here next to each expression, and just to kind of refresh our memories, right? Maybe it's been a few days since you've seen these. So let's take a look at the first one. I'll start with the first one, okay? So if you remember, we did some expressions talking about leaving an impression or making memories. So our first expression was to leave an impression, right? To make an impression. So in this case, this means to cause someone to notice you and possibly admire you. We mentioned, especially, we often use it with the word good, right? I want to make a good impression. So in this case, when we make an impression, it means people remember you, and hopefully for a good reason. All right, so Flor, would you like to read the next one for us?
Yes, teacher. A blast from the past. Something or someone that surprised you because you had almost forget about it.
Yes. So the basic idea for this expression is we're not talking about yesterday or last week, right? When we say it's a blast from the past, we mean something from a long ago, from your past, maybe when you were a teenager or a child that you had probably forgotten about completely. So when something is a blast for the past, it kind of helps you remind you of this. So for example, I don't know how old some of you are. I know all of you are so young, but I'm going to put a song in the chat. Let's see how many of you might remember this song title. Do you guys remember the song We Are the World? How many people remember this song? Okay, some of you might remember it. Yeah. Yeah, so this particular song was, of course, a big part of when I was a teenager, a young teenager. So the song, if you remember, was from 1985. And the song had lots of very famous singers. Does anyone remember some of the singers who were in the We Are the World song project? Tiaba?
Michael Jackson.
Yeah, that's the biggest one, of course, right? Yeah, he was the biggest superstar in the world, kind of like Beyonce or Taylor Swift, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember any others?
I think some artists replay the sound.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they've tried to do it a couple of times since then.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but not quite the same level of success. No.
Uh-huh.
All right. Anyone else remember any of the singers from the We Are the World? So Michael Jackson was one of them. Anyone remember any others? Well, they were certainly big singers for me when I was a teenager. Well, anyway, the reason I mentioned this is because last night my wife and I watched, there is a new Netflix documentary about the night when they made the song. And of course, when we were watching it, we had forgotten some of the singers. And we were like, oh, yeah, do you remember this singer or this person? So it was a real blast from the past. Watching that documentary, suddenly I was 12 years old again, 12 or 13, remembering this big moment. So yes, We Are the World was a big moment for me as a young person. So it was a real blast from the past. All right, Miriam, would you like to read the next one for us?
Yes, to make memories. Complete next.
Yeah, go ahead and read the definition.
Okay. To participate in a pleasant activity that you know you will be remembered in the future.
Okay, so we've talked about these before. So going to Disneyland, for example, might be a thing to make memories. Miriam, what's a trip or a experience for you that that helped you make memories? Can you remember any trips?
Yes, when I came here, whenever I go back to my country, that is to make memories.
I think always when we visit family again, right? We make memories with them. Okay. All right. Very good. All right, Ezra, would you read the next one for us? Now we're talking about a different idea. So, Ezra, would you read the next one?
Okay. A change of heart. A change in feeling or opinion about something, usually from a less favorable to a more favorable position.
All right. Thank you, Ezra. So, again, when we have a change of heart, it's kind of like changing our minds about something, but it's also very emotional. So, perhaps you disagreed with someone, but then you suddenly changed your mind about it and you feel differently about it. So, that's why we say it's less favorable. Now it's more favorable. Like, I agree with you, or now you see my idea. So, when we have a change of heart, we have a change in feeling. All right. Let's continue. Tiaba, would you read the next one for us?
To make a fresh start, to start over, to seek to have a new beginning.
Okay, so again, I think most of us probably remember this one, but to hopefully, hopefully you don't feel like this every day, but sometimes it's good to have a fresh start, right? So often we have fresh starts when we change jobs, maybe we move to a different place, maybe we start a new activity or hobby. So again, a fresh start is something that sometimes we all need. All right, Olivia, would you like to read the next one for us?
To see from a different angle, to see a problem from a new point of view in hope of finding a new way to solve it.
All right, thank you there, Olivia. So again, when we look at things from a different angle, we try to see things from a different point of view. So in this case, maybe you have trouble solving a problem, so maybe you think about it for a while, then try to look at it a different way. All right, Carmen, would you read the next one for us?
Yes. At one's age. They act or behave in a way that is appropriate to one's age. This expression is often used to criticize someone who is acting too young or in an immature way.
Now, Carmen, you've done this with your kids before, right? If your kids act a bad way, you might say, "Come on, act your age," right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially the older, when she's fighting with the youngest child.
It's always fighting with the younger kids, and it's always the old kid who gets in trouble. That's not fair. Okay? That's not fair. I did that with my brother. That's what my mom would always say. "Jonathan, you're the older one. Act your age." I didn't like that. All right. Okay, let's see. I see Vladimir is here. Hey, Vladimir, would you like to read the next one for us? Are you available?
I'm available.
Okay.
Yes. To hold, to perform as well as before.
That's right. So over the hill. So when someone is over the hill.
Over the, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Over the hill, to hold, to perform as well as before.
Okay, now you don't feel this way right now, do you, Vladimir? You don't feel over the hill?
Yeah,
You do?
sometimes.
Like if you are you a runner or do you play basketball or any sports?
Wanna and I'm wanna in the morning jogging and and I go to the gym every week.
Okay, so you don't
Mhm.
feel, it doesn't seem like you're over the hill then, Vladimir. It sounds like you like to exercise. That's good.
Yes, yeah, I love exercise.
All right, so this does not apply to you then. Okay. Now,
Okay,
I'm starting to feel a little over the hill in some ways. Okay, maybe.
okay.
All right. Okay, guys, our final expression. I'll read our final one for us. So again, this is a little bit of the opposite of over the hill, in one's prime. So remember, when you're in your prime, you feel like you're in your most successful, productive period of life. Now, we talked a little bit about this last class, that you can feel in your prime when you feel like this is the best time of your life. Now, if you feel like you're in your prime now, that's great. Unfortunately, sometimes people might think, well, I was in my prime 10 years ago. That's not so good. Now, my wife and I were talking about this topic this morning, right? Now, so my wife and I we're both in our 50s, okay? But sometimes I feel like I'm in my prime, like, life is good generally. But then my wife was like, well, wait a minute, maybe our 40s was our prime. I don't know. Some people feel like their teenage years were their prime. I don't know. Maybe you feel like you're in your prime now. I hope you don't feel like your prime was 10 years ago. So, but this is, I think, an important discussion. How do we know we're in our prime? Well, you don't. In this case, hopefully you feel good. So in this case, some people might say, I'm not old, I'm classic. Or I'm in my prime now because I still feel like I've got some good years to go. All right, well, guys, those were all of our expressions for this particular for these last few days. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the breakout room. Now we're going to do something a little different. So in this next activity, one person will be A and one person will be B, but you have some very, very short conversations. So notice conversation 1, 2, and 3 are all very, very short. But in each conversation, partner A and partner B, there will be a moment in both conversations where you will have to choose which expression fits the situation. Now, I'm not going to give you the answers right away. So I'm going to let you try these 3 conversations with your partner. So again, one person will be A, one person will be B. If you want to switch for the next conversation, that's fine. But the idea is that each person will have to make one decision about which expression will be the correct one. And then when you're finished, I have 4 statements where you can discuss with your partner, do you think these sentences are true or false? Now, we're not going to spend a long time on this exercise, so we'll probably take about 5 or 6 minutes. And then when we return here to the main room, we'll check our answers for all of these activities. Okay? So one more time. You will go into the breakout room. One person will be A, one person will be B, and you'll try to complete the conversations by choosing the correct expression that fits in the blank. When you're finished, okay, so when you're finished with the 3 conversations, you will have 4 statements. You will have to decide if the statement is true or false. Okay, and then when we're finished, we'll come back to the room and check our answers. All right, well, guys, let's go ahead and check our breakout room situation. We'll see if we have enough 4 rooms. And if not, we may need to readjust, but let's see what we got. Okay. All right. Looks like one group will have a group of 3. Okay. All right. So I think we'll do one group of 3. Okay. All right. So guys, we'll go ahead and go into the breakout room. I will come and share the link to the activity. And like I said, I'm not going to give you the answers. Instead, when you're finished, we'll return to the main room and we'll check our answers. So for the group of 3, maybe you can just rotate. One person be A, one person be B. Then the next activity, another person can be A, another person can be B. So you can kind of rotate around. All right, guys, get ready. Here we go. Hey, Joanna.
Hi, morning.
So we're just about ready to come back from breakout rooms.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
I just want to let you know that I received the glasses. I already
Good.
received. Thank you.
All right. So, do you have any plans? Do you know what you're doing?
Yeah, we're gonna visit. We're gonna visit the place that you recommend us.
Okay. Well, just remember, it's going to be crazy that day.
Yeah, we are. We're about
So,
that.
so yeah. So my advice is, wherever you go, don't leave when it's over. Just wait.
Just
Yeah,
wait.
and just remember that gasoline could be a problem. So make sure you have plenty of gas before you get there.
All right.
Yeah, it gets a little crazy. So, all right. Okay, everybody, let's see how we did on the exercise. Okay, so class, let's check our answers. So for conversation number 1, here we go. So conversation 1, starting with A, it says, let's talk. And person B says, sure. I've
Had a change of heart.
had a change of heart. I agree with your point of view now. Really? I'm surprised. I guess I.
Made a good
Made
impression.
a good impression on you.
Yes, you did. Okay. So that was how the activity was working. So hopefully you got the answers for those first 2. Now remember, you have to look at the whole conversation to think about the choices, right? So in this case, the person probably did not agree with them at first, and then they changed their mind, right? I agree with you now. All right. So let's turn it over to conversation number 2. Okay, guys. So what do you think? Which one should be our first choice? Come on, you're not
Over the hill.
over the hill. You're still pretty young, right? Well, I look young, but I don't always.
Act my age.
My
Age.
age.
So hopefully you guys do. But in this case, now again, for the B choice, you had to look very carefully at the word not. Yeah, that was the tricky word. When you're not over the hill, that means you're still doing okay, right? So that was the tricky part. You're not over the hill. You're still young. All right, and then the last one. Okay, I'm ready for a new job. So he says, yeah, I need.
To make a fresh start.
And can I suggest?
Seeing this from a different angle.
An angle.
Yeah. So in this case, sometimes when people need a fresh start, you might say, no, look at it this way. Here's a different way to look at it. So, okay, guys, well, I hope we got most of the answers for the exercise. But again, it takes a little time to put the information together. All right. Now, here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to call on different students to read the sentence for us and tell us your opinion. So, Miriam, would you like to read number 1 for us and tell us if you think it's true or false?
Okay. Someone who is in their prime feels that their best years are over and they will never return to that wonderful period in their lives.
So what do you think, true or false?
I think it's false.
You are correct. So in this case, if I wanted to make the sentence true, how could I change it, Miriam, to make it a true sentence?
Never return to wonderful period in their lives.
So what do you think? How could I change the sentence to make it true?
Someone who feels like they're the best year and over return that winter.
Okay, I'll give you a hint. I think if you change the expression, it would make it true. So can anyone remember what expression could we use? So instead of in their prime, what could we say?
To make a memory?
No.
Yeah.
To act your age.
No. I'll give you a hint.
Over the hill.
Over the hill. Remember, someone who is over the hill feels like they're too old.
Yes.
So in this case, if you wanted to make it true, you could just change the expression. So that's one way to make the expression. All right. Well, Ezra, how about number 2? Would you like to read it for us and tell us if you think it's true or false?
Okay, one way to act your age is to behave like a teenager.
What do you think? True or false?
I think it's false.
And you're correct. So what do you think, Ezra? How could we change the sentence to make it true?
Maybe to behave like anything, not teenager, but maybe 30-ager or 40.
What do we call a person who's over 21? What could we call them? Starts with an A.
Adult.
Adult, yeah. So maybe for you, you might say adult.
Don't, yeah.
Yeah, of course, I'm sure, Ezra, you could say a young adult, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, not an old adult like me, right? Okay. I know sometimes if we're feeling young, right, we're like, yeah, I'm not old. Come on. Yeah. In this case, though, adult would be a good word. All right. Thank you, Ezra. All right. Olivia, would you like to try number 3 for us? All right, Olivia, are you there? Okay, well, she might be busy at the moment. Let's see, Joanna, would you like to try number 3?
Yes.
So can you read it for us, please?
When you have a change of heart, you go from misunderstanding someone's point of view to understanding and maybe even accepting their ideas.
So what do you think? Do you think that's true or false?
Maybe it's false.
Okay. Or
You have a change.
or maybe
Oh no, yes, it's true.
in this case, the key word was here, from misunderstanding to understanding and maybe even accepting. So remember, when we have a change of heart, it means we now agree with someone. Now, of course, who knows what you're agreeing with, but we often use it where we had some disagreement, right? Now I've had a change of heart. Now I agree with you, or I see your point of view. Okay? All right, let's try the last one. So Tiaba, would you like to read number 4 for us?
An example of a blast of the past would be something that happened last week.
What do you think? True or false?
I think it's false.
You are correct. So how could we change it to make it true?
It's happened a long time ago.
Yeah, that's the key word, right? So it can't just be last week. I don't know, unless you're a baby and maybe you don't remember many things. So, but that's probably not true. Babies don't really remember stuff, do they? So in this case, yeah, from a long time ago. That would be a better answer. Now, I didn't ask the class here because I don't know necessarily how old everybody is. But I gave an example a few minutes ago about the We Are the World, right? The song. Now, that was a long time ago, but that's also because I was alive, right? I was a teenager during that time. So for me, that was, a blast from the past. That was 40, almost 45 years ago. Now, I'm not going to ask anybody here in the class, were you alive during the first We Are the World? But Tiaba, you did mention that there have been other We Are the World songs. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So for example, this is the 25th anniversary of that the second We Are the World. Did you know that?
I didn't know it.
Do you remember that from your childhood?
No.
Okay. You don't have to tell us how old you are. That's okay. That's all right. But I'm curious here. This is what I'd like to see right now. Everybody, let's go to the chat. Let's take a quick moment. If you had to think of a movie that would be an example of a blast from the past from your childhood. Okay? Now, everybody think about it for a moment. Put your answer in the chat. What would be a blast from the past from your childhood of a movie? A movie, and especially a movie maybe that everybody would know. Okay? Now think about it for just a moment. Let's see some examples. Maybe we can guess how old some of us are in the class. You don't have to tell us your age, but let's see if we can guess who the young people are and the older people are. So I'll put my answer, and then we'll see what your answers are. So I'll give you my example, and I'll give you the year for mine. All right, so I'm looking at Tiafa mentioned Titanic. I knew someone was going to mention Titanic. Tiafa, I knew it. Now, Joanna, you mentioned Sailor Moon. Now, I've heard of Sailor Moon. Is that an anime?
Yes.
Okay, I've heard some other students mention that before. So, all right. So already that's telling me something about your age, right? Anime. Okay. Floor mentioned The Mermaid. Do you mean The Little Mermaid, Floor?
Yeah.
The song,
I don't know.
the
mermaid,
musical?
the red hair.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
But you
because
mean
then maybe 2 years ago is
Yeah.
a new mermaid. But
yeah, I kind of thought, Floor, you're not 4 years old, all right? So
no, yeah, I for it.
you feel younger, I know. All right, now Carmen mentioned Pulgarcito. Is this something you could translate for us here, Carmen?
Pulgarcito is a short boy, and he has another brothers, and he is the short brother in their family, and they live in the forest, and a giant men rob their children, and he eats the children.
Oh my goodness.
But this is very old, this movie.
Okay, so I think first off we need to understand that did you see this in the movie theater or on television?
In television.
Okay, that's the first thing I want to tell everybody, because I suspected the translation is Tom Thumb, and I suspected that was the story you were talking about. So I saw the same one on TV too. So Carmen, you're probably still a little younger than I am, but I kind of thought, wait a minute, that's really old. So
Yeah, it's really old. And
Yeah, it's
maybe,
really old.
maybe Flor know this movie.
Well, I do remember it because when I was a kid, they would show a lot of those types of shows on TV, cartoons. So, okay, all right. So Vladimir, Olivia, do you guys have any examples? Any movies? Miriam, any movie we might know?
Just Titanic. It's a
Just
fast one.
Titanic. Okay. Listen, I've been teaching a long time, and Titanic seems to be the one movie that everybody knows.
Because
Everybody.
in my childhood, there is no concept to watch English movies.
I gotcha. Okay.
So nowadays, it's on trending to watch movies.
Okay. But I think Titanic seems to be one that everybody knows.
Yes.
So, okay. All right. Okay, so I'm looking in the chat here. I'm starting to see. Okay, here how old everyone is. All right. Okay. But that's a very funny example, Carmen. That's very funny. I like that. So anyway, but I do remember Tom Thumb. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, guys, well, I hope this was a helpful activity for us, and certainly those are examples of blasts from the past. Yeah, a long time ago. They would need to be a long time ago. And even Titanic, I mean, I guess now Titanic doesn't feel that long ago to me, but I guess it was almost 30 years ago, right, Diaba? So there you go. Okay. Okay, guys, well, thanks so much for sharing it. That was kind of funny. All right, now, guys, with the remaining time, we're going to introduce our next topic. Excuse me. And then at the last part of our class, we're going to do a quick little song activity to kind of help us go into the weekend. So today we're looking at the modal verbs of must and have to, and especially talking about them, using them in the positive form and in the negative form. So what I would like to do, again, I think the most important thing is to talk about their sort of basic similarities and differences. So just going back, first off, let's just review what they mean. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in. I don't know why this is always so small. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. I don't know if you can see that or not. Well, that doesn't really help a lot. But anyway, I'll use my little pointer here. So the idea of must, okay? Most of you probably are aware that must is referring to some sort of obligation. Now, we especially use it with a kind of the idea of something that's legal or something that's required. So if I say, for example, you must wear your seatbelt when you're driving, right? That would be a very strong obligation that we would have to do as people driving a car. But remember, you can also use the word must to talk about a present or even future necessity. So if I say, for example, you must find your passport. Now, you might say, well, I'm not talking about what's legal, right? I mean, if I'm saying to someone, you must find something, what I'm showing you is that it's really important at this moment. So if I say, for example, I must find my keys, right? I'm looking for my keys. I have to leave to go to work. Now you're telling someone I must do this, like it's my number one necessity at the moment. So in this case, when we use must, we're talking about some present or future obligation or necessity. Now, one big difference between these two expressions of must and have to is that we do not use must in the past. It doesn't really exist in the past tense. So if you want to use it in the past, the idea, then you would probably use the verb have to, right? So in this case, I had to. Now, again, we would use it as a necessity or a requirement. If, for example, I got a speeding ticket, you drive too fast and you get a ticket, and then you paid the ticket yesterday, you might say, I had to pay the ticket, right? I was required. It was the law. It was an obligation. So in this case, we use have to talk about an obligation or a necessity. Now, we can use it in the past, the present, or even the future. So if I say, for example, the fridge was empty, which that happens to me a lot, I had to go to the supermarket. Now, again, not the legal requirement, but the necessity to do it. I really had to do it. Now, look at the second example. She's flying to Europe. She has to find her passport. Now, in this case, she has to find her passport. Could I also say she must find her passport? Would that be acceptable if I changed this one has to must? Could I say that? Yeah, I could, because again, I'm expressing necessity, very strong necessity. Now, if you notice the last example, friends are coming for dinner tomorrow, I will have to cook. So in this case, even though it's the future, you probably could also say I must cook, though that sounds a little strong. But in this case, in many cases, have to and must do share similarities. So in this case, we use have to express the past, present, or the future. Most people think of it as the strongest form of obligation, but we use it only in the present or in the future. Now, to use the forms here, again, you can see them here. We won't review those, but I will mention that if you use it in the future, it's generally will have to. Right? That seems more common instead of they must do something. So it depends on what the situation is. Now, one big difference, of course, is when we talk about the negative forms. This is where we do have a kind of difference between these two expressions. So, for example, we use mustn't for any sort of present or future prohibition. Now, this is important. A prohibition basically means that you can't do it. There's some legal reason, or there's some sort of dangerous situation, or something bad is definitely going to happen. Now, look at the two examples here. He's allergic to milk. He mustn't have any. So in this case, do not give him milk or something bad is going to happen. Okay. The meeting is at 10. You mustn't be late. Again, this is telling someone that there is some consequence if you don't show up at 10. What do you think might happen to this person if they do not show up at 10 o'clock? What do you think might happen? Anyone have an idea? Carmen, what do you think?
Her boss will be angry.
Probably, or maybe even fire you. Yeah, you might even lose your job. Yeah, or lose money. So, yeah, in this case, when you say you mustn't be late, you're basically telling them there is some negative consequence. So mustn't is very, very strong. Okay, that's important to remember. Now, don't have to. This is a little bit different because, yes, there is kind of this lack of obligation or necessity, but it's not always exactly the same as a prohibition. It just depends on the situation. And remember, you can use don't have to in the past, present, or future. So again, look at these examples. There was food in the fridge. I didn't have to go to the supermarket. Now, does that mean I was prohibited from going to the supermarket? No, it just means that it was not required. I had no obligation to do it. She isn't going away this year. She doesn't have to get a passport. That means she doesn't have the necessity to do it. Okay? Now, could I say she mustn't get a passport? No, that's not the same thing. If I say she mustn't get a passport, you're telling her don't do it because something bad will happen. If she got the passport, maybe something bad would happen. I don't know what, but that would be the idea. All right, look at the last example. We're going out for dinner tomorrow. I won't have to cook. Now, maybe you feel that way sometimes. Good, I don't have to cook. But in this case, you're not saying it's against the law. It's not some prohibition. You're just saying that I don't have the obligation to do it. So again, in many cases, mustn't is not exactly the same as don't have to. Okay, these are two different things. So to review real quickly, before we do an activity, when I use must or have to, they basically have the same meaning, right? They basically have the same meaning except for this part right here. You cannot use must in the past, okay? But when it comes to the negative forms, there is a difference. Mustn't is talking about prohibition. Don't have to is talking about I don't have the obligation or the necessity to do it. Okay, so those are the basic differences. Now, again, I think the most helpful way to learn is to do some exercises. So everyone, let's take a look. Again, we'll see how much time we have. We may not have time to do everything, so I'm going to go ahead and switch back to our presentation. Now, class, I need your help with this group activity. The idea is we're going to substitute part of the sentence. And remember, there could be more than one choice, but in many cases, there's probably only one. So if you look at my examples, it says, write sentences with the same meaning as the originals. So we're going to use either mustn't, don't have to, or doesn't have to. Okay, so let's do number one as just kind of our example. All right, and again, we can use the chat or the mic to help me make a substitution. So number one says, there is no need for you to pay extra for insurance. Okay, so changing it to you. So if I'm going to replace no need to, right? No need to. That's what we're replacing. No need for you to do it. All right, now class, could I say you mustn't pay extra for insurance, or you don't have to pay extra for insurance?
You don't have
You
to.
don't have.
You don't have to. Yes, that's correct. Because in this case, it's not a prohibition. It's just an obligation. Okay, so again, that's the difference between these. Okay. All right, so again, I'm just going to kind of make it quick here since our time is a little short. All right, let's look at number two. The car rental agent is not allowed to rent a car to Tom because Tom doesn't have a driver's license. That would be a small problem. All right, now, the car rental agent mustn't rent a car to Tom or doesn't have to rent a car to Tom?
Mustn't.
Mustn't.
Okay, I hear mustn't as our answer, and guess what? You are correct. Because the key word is he is prohibited. He is not allowed to rent a car. Okay, that's again, very different idea. All right, number three, it's not a good idea for Jack and Leslie to rent a compact car. It's too small for them. All right, so Jack and Leslie mustn't rent a compact car or don't have to rent a compact car?
Don't have to. Don't have to.
Okay, anybody else?
I think it's mustn't.
Okay, Joanna, let's explain. Let's discuss. So why do you think it's mustn't?
Because It's not like it's prohibited. It's just like a simple solution for them because they need a car bigger.
Oh, that's true. Okay, so but the question is, you said it's not a prohibition. That's true. It's not a prohibition, but why then mustn't?
It's a necessity.
Well, let's see. They need to rent a car. That's true. The question is, are we giving them an idea that there could be a consequence? So if it's too small, what could be the consequence?
Oh, car accident.
Aha. So in this case, that's why mustn't would be the correct answer, because the key words are right at the beginning. When someone says it's not a good idea, they're not talking about the need for it. So they need a car. It's just that they don't need this one. So they should not rent a small car. They need to rent a bigger one. So in this case, mustn't rent a compact car would be the correct answer. So remember, mustn't is not always prohibition, like it's against the law. Okay? What you're saying is it's a bad idea to do it because something bad will happen if they do it. Okay? So again, that's a very kind of different thing. All right, what about the last one, class? Sarah is not obliged to fill up the tank with gas. So she mustn't fill up the tank, or she doesn't have to?
She does have to.
Yeah, she's not required to do it. Now, what's interesting, of course, is that's generally true of rental companies, right? But there is a consequence if you don't do it. But in this case, you have a choice. So remember, if you have choices, then that's not the same as prohibition. If I go back to number 3, of course they have choices, but the intention of the sentence is to tell them that something bad will happen to you. Now, in number 4, well, in this case, something bad might happen to her, but I don't think it's that bad. What do you think might happen if she doesn't fill up the tank with gas? What might happen?
If she doesn't fill up the tank, they will ask for more money.
That's definitely true of rental companies, right? Yeah, so that's not exactly the most serious consequence. So in this case, that's a very difficult difference between the two, but that's the idea. It's not required of her to do it. So remember, guys, when you see the examples, it's about intention. What do they mean? Sometimes they're telling you must do it or something bad will happen. Other times they're just saying, you're not required to do it. Okay? All right. Now you guys did a great, kind of off to a good start. Now we're going to do a quick breakout room activity. Here's how it's going to work. So in the breakout activity, you and your partner are going to read these tips. Okay? There are 5 tips here on the screen. Okay? And then you will have 5 sentences. Some of them are true, some of them are false, or you're going to say whether you can replace them with the correct answer or not. Okay? So the idea is read the tips, and then when you go to the discussion questions, try to answer as many questions as you can. Okay? Now, we're going to take about, 10 minutes or so, maybe a little more to do this exercise. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Now, I'm going to change the groups a little bit. We're going to put 3 people in each group. So let me change the groups up a little bit here. We may have to do 4. So I think we'll just do 2 groups of 4. Okay, that'll make it a little faster for us. All right, so guys, I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms, and then I'll come in and share the link to the exercise. So again, read the tips first, and then go to the discussion questions. The discussion questions will be talking about the tips. All right, guys, here we go. All right, I think just about everybody has returned. Okay, so I was listening to a couple of both groups and listening to a couple of discussions. I think there may have been some confusion about a couple of the questions. So we'll take a look at them real quickly. So let's go through real quickly and answer the questions, and then we'll discuss. So, for example, number 1, true or false? The rental car agent is obligated to give you a special price for long-term rentals. And so, how do we answer the question? Well, go back and look at the tips. So, for example, look at tip number 2. What does it say? The car rental agent has to give you a special price. So, are they obligated to give you a special price? Is that true or false?
False.
That
True.
is true. If they have to do it, they're obligated to do it. So remember, a have to is also an expression of obligation. Okay? So in this case, the answer is true. They have to. All right, number 2. So I think this is number 2 and number 3, maybe the ones that confused us a little bit. The question is, can I replace the sentence with a different sentence? That's what the question says. So for example, in tip number 3, the text says you don't have to make a reservation. Is it possible to replace this with you mustn't make a reservation? Okay, now is the answer yes or no? Is it possible? Are these sentences saying the same thing? Are they saying the same thing? Yes or no?
It's not the same.
It's not the same. So the answer is no, it is not possible. If you don't have to make a reservation, that means, okay, it's not required. Now, I heard some of you talk about the possible consequence, which is maybe you don't get a car. That's true. But what they're saying is if a car is available, you don't need a reservation. You could rent that car. So the policy is not that you must rent, you must make a reservation or no car. It just means that the possibility is you may not get a car. But if I say you mustn't make a reservation, that actually is a totally different meaning. If I said you mustn't make a reservation, that means don't make a reservation. Okay? Like it's bad idea. Don't do it. Well, that's crazy, right? So I think some of you were talking about that in that way, but the basic answer is no, these are not the same sentence. So in this case, the answer is no, these are not the same. All right, now look at question number 3. You must pay extra for GPS. You have to pay extra for GPS. Is this the same? Yes or no? Can you replace that sentence with you have to pay? If the original sentence says you must pay, can I replace it with you have to pay?
Yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. Now, again, I heard some of you talking about I've got GPS on my phones. Okay, now look at the sentence carefully, class. It doesn't say that you must rent a GPS. Okay, do you see that? I think some of you were confused because you thought the sentence said you must rent the GPS. The answer is no, you don't have to rent the GPS. But if you want the GPS, what happens? What happens if you want the GPS?
We have to pay extra.
Extra.
Yeah, it's not included in the cost of the car. You have to pay extra. Now, of course, you're right. Who's gonna rent the GPS anymore because you got your phones? Okay, number 4, the rental car company is not obligated to give you a full tank of gas. Is that true or false?
False.
Yeah, if you go back to the original sentence, it says the car rental company has to give you a full tank of gas. That's in tip number 5. So in this case, the answer is false. They must give you. Okay? All right, and then finally, number 5, what do you think might happen if you don't return the car with a full tank of gas? What do you think might happen, class? We talked already about it. What do you think is going to happen?
We're gonna pay extra money.
Probably, yeah. Most likely, they're not going to steal something. They're not going to say, "Okay, give us your phone." What? No, you're just going to pay extra money, right? And guess what? Usually, this is what they charge you, right, per gallon. Have you had this happen before? If you're like renting here, it's usually like $5.99 a gallon. Now, if you're in California, has anybody rented a car in California before? It's usually like $12 a gallon they'll charge you. Yeah, so don't forget to put gas back in your car. Okay, so Guys, you'll get some more chances to practice with this for homework, okay? Because it takes a little time to understand the differences. But the basic idea, I heard you guys talking. I think you were going in some right directions. But the key is, what are the activities asking me to do? So in this case, guys, I think we were in the right direction. But hopefully now we understand what the questions were asking us. So that's the important thing that we were looking at. Okay, now, guys, I have a special surprise here for the last few minutes. And that is a little song activity. Now, we were talking about Michael Jackson. We were talking about famous people. But if you don't already know this group, they were probably the biggest musical group in history, the Beatles. How many people here know the Beatles? Have we heard of the Beatles before? Hopefully, most of us have heard of them. Now, maybe you don't know all their songs, but that's okay. You probably at least heard their names. So anyway, let's talk about them real quickly. Again, our time's kind of short, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. All right. So again, the Beatles actually were around for only about 10 years. So they were the most popular and influential British rock group of the 1960s and probably the most influential of all time. So there were 4 members of the group. Their names were John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. Today, only Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr are alive. They're the only ones living. They are the biggest and best-selling group of all time. They've sold 600 million albums. Now think about that. That is twice the population of the United States. So that tells you they sold a lot of records. And they have the most #1 songs of all time in the United States at 20. So in this case, if you look at the picture over here, this is a young picture of them. But there's Paul McCartney. That's Ringo Starr. These are the only 2 who are left alive. This is from their tour in 1964 when they first came to the United States. Big hit. Crazy crowds everywhere. And guess what, guys? The Beatles did come to Cincinnati during this tour. So it was pretty big, really big. Now, the song we're going to be listening to is called Here Comes the Sun. Maybe you've heard this song before. It's a very well-known song. It's written by George Harrison. Now, most of the songs were written by Lennon and McCartney, but George Harrison did write a few songs that became big hits, and probably his most well-known song is Here Comes the Sun. It appears on their album Abbey Road. If you look over here on the right side, you may have seen this album cover before. People like to make fun of it. When people go to London, they love to get their pictures made right here on this street. But there is the cover for the album. Now, the song, though, is a fairly simple song, but it's a very good song, and I think a very makes us feel good kind of song. According to Harrison, he wrote this song after a long winter. And he missed the sun, and he was so happy to see the sun return. So that's why it's called Here Comes the Sun. So I thought this would be the perfect time for us, since the eclipse of 2024 is happening on Monday, and since it's happening during the early part of spring, maybe you're happy to see the sun. I know I'm happy to see the sun. Not today, of course, no sun, it's cold, and it's maybe snowing. So I thought we would take a moment and learn the song. Now, I have to stop recording because obviously this song is not mine. So I'm going to click on and stop recording now. Okay, so I'll stop it now.